Okay, we'll go ahead and start recording. The morning is July 26th, and we are continuing working on Lab 0503. And so, every day we're putting in hours and kind of condensing a long day into a 2 to 3 hour video to put out on YouTube. And so, what you don't see is some of the troubleshooting on the back end and why these things take a little bit longer. But we kind of left off with this bug editor and um, being able to edit bugs and log in and the like. And so here's our current state of the software, and we can log in. Now, because it is hitting a database, it takes a little second to log in, and then we see our different bugs. And we're using this moment library to get this formatted to say how many days ago this was using a moment. Then we can click on edit bug, and we can now say running solely from 6 till 12. Click on edit bug. Now, this is kind of where it is, that if I inspect it, we should get a success message kind of saying, successful. But if I go back to my bug list, you can see the edit was made. So on a successful edit, it's not really giving us any success message. And so obviously we're gonna give a success message and probably navigate back to the bug list, is where that is. Now, some other things is, there's other fields here. I somehow lost my title on my bug editor. There's some other fields that maybe we display based on permissions. You display some fields and others you don't. Going back to our database, schema on Mongo, we have a lot of fields. We're storing the whole car, if you will. We're storing everything together pretty well into two collections. The way that I chose to implement my database is I'm either storing everything in bug and all of the comments on the bugs and all of the test cases on the bugs, or I'm storing it in users. And so there are a lot more fields when it comes to a bug and editing a bug. Maybe adding a test case, and do you have permissions to add a test case, and maybe conditionally displaying a button to add a test case. So if I go into my collections and here's my bugs, we have on some of these, let's see if I can find a bug with a test case. Now I generated these. Oh, here's a test case array, and here's a test case object. And so some of these have test cases on them, some of them don't. But the point is, based on a permission, if you're in a group or if you're in a role that has permission to add a test case, then maybe you see a button to do so, and you can add a test case. So there's a lot of work to do here. But the point that I want to drive home is everything's either stored in users or it's stored in bugs, and we're getting there, but we have a fair amount of work to do. So back to the front end code, one thing that makes sense to me before we dive too deep is to go ahead and on a successful, instead of just putting the data in a console, let's maybe redirect the user and give them a success message saying that the bug has been edited. All right, so one thing that we'll want to do here on a success, and then we're going to navigate, right? And when we click to update a bug on a success, we'll navigate. So in order to do that, we need to bring in the use navigate on React Router. We already have use params. So let's now use navigate, and then that allows us to kind of just build up this function by say const navigate equals use navigate. It's pretty simple function call here, and it allows us to have this navigate This is actually a function, line 9. It's a variable that stores a function. So now we can use this navigate function to say, hey, on a success, we know we don't need to console log. Instead, we're going to navigate to our route, which is slash bugs list, I believe. And I also want a success message. So let's see if we have success. Okay, bug editor. We need to send down that Toastify method called show success. So here's our bug editor. So I'll pass down show success equals show success. And that should allow us to accept show success over here and call it and what do I want to say? You know, for here I'll say something just like bug saved. Maybe something along those lines. So now order of operations is interesting. You know, do we show success and then navigate? Do we navigate and then you know, which one do you do? Now, I think you can actually navigate and then show success. I don't know that the order of operations matters. So let's refresh and just say 5 and click edit bug. Bug saved, and it did go a little, oh, no routes matched bugs list. Is it bug list singular? Yeah, it is bug list. So let me just change my URL to bug list. And click on edit bug. Let's go back up from 5 to 12, 6 to 12, 6 to 12, and there you get the little bug saved. And there it is saying from 6 to 12. The next thing is I want to make sure that the classification on the front end only allows certain values to go in. So we're going to change classification to a drop-down list, which, you know, obviously we need to read the classification out of the bug and then have the selected classification based on that bug's classification. So we can kind of code up a bootstrap drop-down list. And we're going to have to use the selected attribute to dynamically select whatever value is selected on the bug. So that'll be a little bit more than just a text box. So here's our select, right? So here's a pretty standard select form, of which the first one says open the select menu. Now we can write a little front-end JavaScript to make sure that they're selecting one of these values. So, you know, or we just don't put the first option, because notice the first option says selected, but it doesn't have a value. So, you know, maybe we do that, or maybe we don't. I probably just would keep that off, but we'll start with that. And if I bring it down to classification, let me comment out the fields and paste in a drop down. Get this tabbed over right. Okay. So let me look at the back end and kind of see what our, that's a user, here's a bug. And so we have approved, unclassified, duplicate, or unapproved. And those are the 4 classifications that are valid. So let's just kind of code that up in our front end. Approved, unclassified, duplicate, unapproved. So maybe approved, approved, unapproved, unapproved, duplicate, and unclassified. Okay, so then we'll wire up on change, and we're just going to say EVT, and we'll call the function that we had before, edit classification. And on edit classification, EVT target.value should still work on reading the classification. And so I actually think this code will work. But what I'm going to do is just to make sure that our console log, just do a little classification change called, just to make sure our event listener is firing, which seems like a good idea to me. Let's reboot. And why is my control not showing up? Bug editor, select. Let me just back up. Log in. Oh, I had an edit bug. There we go. Okay. So there, we're looking good. Now, got some warning there. Class versus class name, and default value instead of value. So a couple of things to change. Of course, class name on my Bootstrap class, and it didn't use the default value or value props on the select instead of selected on option. So it doesn't like selected, it wants default value. Default value equals, and this is interesting. So default value equals, and I wonder if I'm allowed to do something like bug ? Dot classification. I wonder if that will select. Let's refresh. Okay, not quite what I wanted. I didn't think it would work, I was just trying. So form select, option, okay. And so I'm going to take the default value off. And refresh. Okay, open this select menu. And so if I were to just hard code something like, again, it didn't like the selected attribute. Oh, it did, okay. Selected was fine on there. So it'd be nice to write like a little ternary, like bug classification. If so, you say selected. Otherwise, you say nothing. And when it does want you to spread bug, classification, okay, so let me okay, trying some different things here. The first thing, I did test that my change event handler is running, right? So that's simple enough. When we get the data here from Axios and we set the bug, then we should be able to, outside of use effect, I'm going to make a variable here. So this is bug dot classification. Or nothing. I'll just even put the word nothing. So, we'll call this bug classification. We'll call it initial bug. The initial bug classification. And that should allow us to go down to here. Now this is statically coded, which should be fine. Let's go to our select. Let's put a value equal to our initial bug classification. Okay, now it is selecting approved. If I go back here, running slow from 6 to 12, classification approved, which is correct. If I go back to bug lists, this should be unclassified. Okay, so that was basically the little trick there was to create this variable equal to the current bug classification if the bug exists. Assign this variable to the classification and then just down here on the select value, put that variable in there, and that's going to select the option that is currently stored in the database. Now, if I change, that's going to allow us to change any one of those. And so let's see if, again, this is changing the approved to unapproved, and unapproved, and bug saved. Duplicate, easy enough. And of course, that bug classification should also be changed in the database, because that's how everything is wired up. So our bug duplicate is its current status, duplicate is the classification. So we're getting that full stack. The data is being ultimately set in the database, and that's working. So that's cool. I don't know if you caught this, but by changing the device toolbar, because this is built in Bootstrap, we're getting a mobile responsive. That's the idea of Bootstrap, of course. Alrighty. So the next kind of thing is, well, what about our errors? And so when we hit Axios, on our login, and it's easy to ignore the errors, but we did have some errors here, and right now we're not doing anything on our error side. So I'm going to take this catch block for our login, and I'm just going to copy this logic into bug editor. And in our catch block, instead of console, well, we'll still console log error, but then we'll paste that logic. And what do I need to bring in? I need to bring in the show error from app, and I need to bring in Lodash. So up at the top, import underscore from Lodash, and I need to bring in show error into bug editor. Show error equals show error. And then I'm back on bug editor, put a comma, show error. And so now our errors should be popping up as a toast. Okay, just a quick note. Yesterday, along the way, I kind of updated my back end a little bit with these various permissions, and that got me looking at my logic on my back end, and I realized, well, there's a classification that we didn't send across, and so I kind of added this whole classification from the body. That wasn't there yesterday, and then line 240 wasn't there yesterday, so I had to update my back end a little bit to support changing the classification. All right. I'm going to change this to store. You don't have to store each property, just store the whole bug. Store the bug in a state variable. Store the bug in a state variable. Okay. And, I mentioned this in the beginning part of this class, but these labs are really just a completion grade. I know that there are more specific rubrics, but, it's mainly, graded on completion. Did you get it into a working state? And then, the tests, as you know, we get very specific on the rubrics, but these are just more of a general guideline, and they are graded on completion. But that is something that is not super relevant, but okay, error messages and success. Again, I'm not worried about the spinner because it all happens so fast that spinner is not super necessary. And that's kind of a decent state for the bug editor. Now I know that we'll be coming back to the bug editor. Certainly we'll be coming back to the bug editor. But now we just have like a user list. Inside of the user list, we have user list items. And then we're kind of doing the same thing for users that we just did for bugs. And on this one, we'll go ahead and display our user and cards because that's just different and that's cool. So that's where we're moving into having a list of users and being able to edit our users. And so maybe we close our bug editor, close our login, brings us back to here. Let me spin up a new component, and this will be called user list. I don't doubt that we will receive the auth. Okay, so there's our user list. So let's go ahead and get a route for that and a link on the nav bar. So the route will be in app.js. User list element equals okay, I gotta bring in user list. So let's see if I hit enter there, it imports user list up at the top from components and sends down that. So now on our nav bar, we say if we're auth, we have a nav link to user to bug list, and let's create a nav link to user list. And it doesn't like that there's no longer one root element, so I'll do a empty tag there. Did I delete an li? I must have lost an li. Hold on, let me control Z. Okay, right now there's one li, so I need another li. I must have not copied that correctly. So I need a whole li, copy another li. User list, and now we bring in the fragment to make the compiler happy, to make React happy. Tab that over. So now, once we're logged in, we should see user list. Let me comment out classification on change called, because That's one of the things is you leave in debugging things as you continue to build the software. You don't need them anymore. So it's bug editor. Comment out the debugging classification change called. Once it's working, bring back my user list. Click on user list, it takes me to user list. We're not getting any errors. If I log out, I don't see anything. Click on login. And it takes me by default to the bug list, but I can click user list. And voila. Right, so the next component is a list item. Here's our user list H1. And let me kind of pull some markup from Grant, who's mocked up his, I'm guessing he's mocked up a user list of some sort. Is that right, Grant?
Yeah, it's just a table.
Okay, so I'm probably just going to refactor it into cards, because cards are cool. Front end, React, source, components, user list. Okay, just a container. Let's just glance at it really quick. Did I ever have you install React Developer Tools?
I don't think so.
Haven't used it a ton, but it's an extension on Chrome. And when you're on a site that has a front end in React, it says React Developer Tools has access to the site. You can inspect, and you get these extra React Developer Tool tabs down here. You can click on Components, and you can actually inspect the components that kind of come together to build the interface.
Yeah, I see that. Now I actually do have that installed, so I must have done that at some point.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. Just another tool at your exposure. Where are we at here? EA Gudmested. Log in, user list. Okay, it's just a table, as you said. And we do have search results, sort by, and we'll keep that, but then we'll just kind of get rid of the table. So each user will be put into a card, and so we just need so many cards per row, and so we're just gonna kind of reformat the table as a row. So here's a sort button with our drop-down menus, and here's our table. So in our table, we're just gonna take out our table and div class name equals row. And then we need to pull all of our users out of the database and go ahead and make a here's a bug item. Maybe we call it a user item. I think that's what the lab asks for. A user list item makes more sense. User list item. And each one of these will be a div class name of call, you know, something like that. So, you know, the whole magic on Bootstrap is adding up to 12, and then it's mobile first, and so extra small and small devices would be 1 column per row, and then on medium sizes and going up, it will be 3 columns per row, because you go 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12, therefore you get 3 columns per row on medium, large, extra large, and XXL going up. So that's basically the functionality of the grid system, where it's again, it's mobile first, so it's 1 column on mobile, and then 3 columns on larger, and then we want to put a card in each one, and you know, we're gonna have to hit the database here, but let's go to Bootstrap cards. So you got the parent class of card, you've got a card body, which is going to have your title, kind of the lower portion of the card is the card body. So you, again, very basically, you have a card and a card body, which is a child. Cards have no fixed width, so they'll naturally fill the full width of its parent. This is easily customized with sizing options. So that's something else to keep in mind. But we can kind of take a kind of a de facto card for now. And inside of our column, let's save that. Format with prettier. That didn't work so well. Format with prettier is not very pretty. And let's close our image tag. And style. Now, to do inline styles with React, style prop must be an object. And so here's an inline style. Correct code. Div style, and then object color red. Okay, so let's kind of refactor. Notice that for our inline style, we've got an object, so let's put that, an object, and then we actually have 2 objects, and then a property of width, #18rem, no semicolon. Now 18rem will be in quotes. So inline styles are a little bit different in Bootstrap or in React. That's a little bit of a learning curve for me, because I don't like inline styles personally. I like external styles. But this is class name. Okay, so now maybe in our user list, let's bring in a user list item and hit enter there and just bring in like 3 of them and see what that looks like. Okay. We got 3 cards, and that's what we said, because each card is 4. And because of our custom widths of our cards, right? So that's a card, but this is the column. So the card is, well, it's just about taking up the full column. You're gonna notice, yeah, that card. Oh no, it does have, the card has, the card content is right there. So that's definitely not taking up the full column because there's all that extra space. So it's got margin in between. And, you know, maybe centering that or something, but it looks fine for now. And maybe the one thing I'll do is I'll get 4 per row just because. So we'll do a column medium 3. 3, 3, 3, 3 adds up to 12. So we should be able to plop another user list item in here. And get 4 per row, but then as soon as we start a 5th one, that should, we had a 5th user list item, I should bump it down. And on our row, if we go back to user list, I'll add some margin bottom 3.
Hey, Mr. G, did you hold on for a second?
Sure can.
Thanks.
I'm gonna change that anyways. Maybe put it on our. There we go. Okay, well obviously our user list is going to be dynamic based on how many things are in the database. So we'll go ahead and bring in import use effect and use state from React. And let's bring in use effect. And call it users, set users, use state null. So our friend on this one is going to be the bug list, because they're going to be doing something very similar. So here's bugs and set bugs. There's use effect. Shall we copy everything in here? And paste it into our user list, use effect. Let's bring in Axios. And this is set users. And let's console log res data again. Notice I'm not catching errors here. Could copy and paste our little error messages there should we choose to, but we're no longer hitting API bugs list. Let's check our route, but we should be able to API, I'm assuming, users list. So let's save, close, save, close. Let's go ahead and log in a user. Oh, I'm not hitting my back end, but that's okay. So let's list all users. API user list. See, the inconsistencies there are not a good thing. API bugs list versus API user list. Just something to consider whether you're conventions are singular or plural. I think I pointed that out as I was creating it, but API user list. API user list, passing in our authorization token, right, to the back end to say, hey, yes, we're logged in. There's auth. Make sure that we're passing auth down to user list. User list is passing auth. If you don't pass auth, then the authorization header will never be set, and you'll never get your data. So let's see. If I go to my console, let's clear out my console. Let's log out. See where the errors are. Email must be a valid email. Welcome. User list. Okay, so I am getting an error. 404 response. Couldn't find API user list. Can't find my route. I thought that was correct. /API /user /list. Let me check my back end. User. There's my list. Let me check my server. Oh, I did change it to API users. At some point, I changed it to users. Good for me. Let's fix this. Users. Now we have our 5 users in the data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got a full name, a given name, and a role. Now a role could be a single role, or it could be an array of roles. So maybe in the card title we put the full name. Really not much to our users, and then we'll see if role is a string. Then you do one thing. If it's an array, you do something else. So is how I'm thinking of this, and we will implement kind of a filtering and parameter. When you add this, click on this, it'll add that, hit our route, give us back data in a different order. So that'll be something to implement. Invalid class, do you mean class name? Yeah, where'd I do that? Class name. Where'd I do that? User list item, class name. Oh, there's a bunch of them. Class name. Clear, refresh. There's another. Clear, refresh. Looking good. And now, so on our bug list, we use Lodash to map the bugs. We also give them an index. We have to have a key of the bug ID. One thing I've heard many times in React is, basically every time you're mapping something, the parent element. Now right now, each parent, there's one element, so there's no child at all. But let's just say for every mapping, you've got something more complex going on. It's the parent that needs a key. And the reason the parent needs a key is to keep track of what's changing in the shadow DOM. You know, it's like, hey, I've got these 15 bug items. Which one's which? You got to keep track of the bug items, if there's 15 of them or 5,000 of them, and so you keep track of it with React keeps track of it with a unique key. But what you don't want to do is use an index for that unique key. You might think, well, hey, I've got 5 bugs. They're index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's use the index for the key. But the indexes can change. Like you can remove an element on an array, and then what was index 1 is now index 0, and so the index can change. But something like the bug ID is a better key because, well, the bug ID shouldn't change. So whatever, just food for thought. So let's use Lodash to map our users, and maybe just copy paste. Let's bring in Lodash. And this is no longer bugs, this is users. Now, yeah, okay. And this is no longer bug item, this is user list item. And let's send the whole user down. User equals user. Auth is auth. Key is user underscore ID. This needs to be user. And index is index. So user list item. And so, well, we have 5 users, and so really, if I refresh, I would expect to see 5 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just had to maybe refresh. So there's my 5 cards. There's my bug list. There's my user list. Right now my users are all saying the same thing because I haven't customized the list item. Don't really need an image. However, it would be kind of cool to store images of our users. But we don't have images of our users. There are image generators that we could use, and there's a whole path that we could go down. Card title, maybe we'll put so let's go ahead and receive the user here. And let's say user.fullname. And let's maybe have a button that says edit user. That is a button, something like that. So we're getting our users across. Okay, so now, you know, again, there's not a whole lot there for our users to display, but maybe something like user role, and there's type of user role. So if that's true, let's just do a paragraph of user role. And so in our users, Bob Smith is the only one that has a singular role of developer. And so I'm glad that popped up, because again, all of our other users have an array of roles or is null, right? So array of roles, null, null, array, and null. So that's easy. We did something similar where it's like, okay, you're not an array, you're not a string, so you're, then we tested an array, and that was in, that was in our back end when we were, let's see, in user, trying to remember. Yeah, this all changed. This merge permissions, roles. Yeah. So the next thing to try, right? And this is a little experimentation. So you say array dot is array user dot role. And then if so, then we'll map each one. So we'll do low dash map import from low dash. Map user dot role. And again, if you kind of look at the syntax here, comma, so this is the array, comma, and then each role, arrow function, each role goes to an arrow function, where we will just do a paragraph with the role in it. So if user role is an array, then we map the user role array, and then each role we put into a paragraph. Let's see what breaks. Bug list, user list. Okay. So let's see if it's hitting this at all, right? Because my map doesn't seem to be getting the job done. But maybe I just refactor this and say maybe just let's see if that's returning true. Okay, Doug Gegelman is, well, that's interesting. Yeah, because, oh, that's right, only one of them. So Doug Gegelman, going back to the data, if I go to my users, Doug Gegelman has an array of roles, null, singular, null, and null. So that is correct. Doug Gegelman's the only one with an array of roles. Good. Now I feel like I'm missing a keyword return. Let me go back here. I'm gonna kind of copy my map here and go back to my list item. Okay. Delete the paragraph that says an array. Okay. and here. Maybe I probably forgot my parentheses. I've done that more than once. Am I missing a? Yeah. And unexpected. So let's see, user role and map. Let's just kind of get this onto a single line. There is no bugs. It's I'm sorry, user.role. Pause here for a second. Okay, so my syntax, and I don't know if I did this while I was recording, I stepped away for a minute. My syntax is better now, so where if I have an array of items, in case Doug Guggleman's my only one with an array of roles, it just says array item. So let me kind of go back to the code for this. And by the way, having all these ternary operators, maybe we could just make a method that, you know, determines if it's a string and otherwise it's, because what's coming next is if it's null, right? So if it's a string, do one thing. If it's a array, do something else. If it's null, do something else. I'm kind of envisioning like maybe some little function that we could write that determines what's going on and then just builds a paragraph and then puts in that paragraph. But we'll maybe build out to that. So now, user. Okay, so let's kind of walk through this. We say, okay, if user role is an array, then map the user role array. And you would say each role here, so this is an array, so each role, then print out an array item. So that's why I'm getting two paragraphs here, because there's two array items. But instead of printing out array item, let's just print out role. And now I get developer and quality analyst. So string is one thing, array is the other. Let's see, this says that user list item doesn't have a key. I thought I did that, but I must have not. So here is the user ID. User list item does have a key. Each child in a list. So we have another map. We have another map right here. And we could just do ID equals index, even though I said don't do that. Let's refresh that. Whoops. Clear. Refresh. Bug list, user list. Check the render method of @p. So that is, each list should have a unique key prop. Oh, key, not ID. Key equals index. Now that is kind of buggy that when I refresh my user list, I can go back to bug list, back to user list, and get that there. If I refresh here, this is something to look at. Use effect, auth. So bug list has auth. Okay, so that's something else to look at. Otherwise, we could say user.role is null. No roles assigned. Cool. Let me look at this. Now when I refresh my bug list, my bugs stay there. When I go to user lists, they're there. When I refresh, they disappear currently. Yours do the same, Grant?
My my array isn't coming up still. I'm trying to work on that.
Oh, okay. I'll pause and take a look at it with you. I did notice on my user list, I did leave off auth right here to run use effect anytime auth is modified. And so that might be kind of the reason for user list not sticking around. Now my user list sticks around. Cool. Okay, so we got a user and we got no roles assigned. What else is there for the user that we can maybe show? Let's see, when the user was registered. So inside the card footer, display when the user was registered. So here we have a created on. So in the card footer, of course, there is a card and header and footer. So click on header and footer. So there's card header, there's card body. Just a footer tag. Inside the card body is a block quote, and inside the block quote is a footer tag. So it's literally, aha, there it is, div class card footer. Something along those lines. And we can put some text of like a gray text. So underneath the card body, we can have a card hyphen footer. That's what I thought. It would have been something like that. So there's in my user list item. There's the end of my card body. Let's bring in the card footer. Class name of card footer. And this will be, we'll bring in moment like we did on our bug list item. Bug item. Bring in moment from moment hyphen moment or slash moment. User list item. Import moment. And how did we use moment? We said moment and then from now. So on here, where it says footer, we'll put in a JavaScript moment call, and on the date field, which is user.createdOn from now. And that should say so many days ago, a few seconds ago. Not quite. It was not created a few seconds ago. Let's look at the data. 7:10, 7:10. So let's get rid of the moment and just print out the user created on. Created on. Created on, created on, created on. So bring in a user. They should have a created on. I'm just putting that, trying to put that in a footer. Got the footer. So maybe we need to do JavaScript date methods, and we should probably call like there's like two short date string, two date string. So let's do two date string, because that date is an object. Cannot read undefined to date string. So basically doesn't like my created on. So let's drill into our here. Let's drill into a user. We must not be returning, when we're getting a user by ID, we must not be returning the created on. So our backend, if I go to list all users, that's what it is that our listing of the users is pretty complex. And ultimately, project. Here's our project. Given family, role, full name, email address. We are not projecting created on. These are the fields determine what you do or don't want. So when we're listing our users, we're not listing our created on, therefore it's not sending it to the front end, therefore we couldn't do that. And we may have to change this again, but for right now, created lowercase c, capital O, just making sure that we are getting the field name correct. Created on, created on. Let me redeploy this. Treble flux. Okay, now our backend is redeployed, and now created on should be sent to the front end. And if I refresh, I gotta type this correctly. ToDate string is not a function. So I'm just going to get rid of created on. So let's see if we're getting the data to the front end. So if I look at my data here, I'm still not getting created on my front end. Back into the back end one more time. It did deploy it. Maybe I am just going to log back out, kind of get everything. Okay, better. That just took a refresh. Sometimes you getting your dates coming across?
Yeah, just like yours.
Sweet. Now let's bring in moment, because working with dates in JavaScript is never as straightforward as you wish it was. Moment from now. Aha, a day ago, 16 days ago. And so maybe we would say something like user created (16 days ago). Bob Smith we created yesterday. Looks like we do have a sort by name kind of on the back end, probably, you know, sort by given name. Sort by default is by given name first, then family name, then creation date. Of course, we can change that. Wonderful. So we see the user, we see the roles, we see the date created. What else do we want? We're in a card. Display the user's role as badges. All right. For any role, do a primary. Users with no role, do a danger. Okay. That's cool. Badge. Span with badge and badge primary. So here, instead of a paragraph, we'll do a span. Close the span. Class name of badge and badge primary. And this one, make it a span. We could have left it a paragraph. Line break or no line breaks, really. Class name, badge, and badge danger. How did I lose my roles by changing that? I somehow lost my roles. So let me undo. Okay, so here, paragraph, class name, badge. Maybe I didn't do my classes right. Badge and, oh, BG, that's what it is. I didn't do my classes right. BG hyphen primary. Cool. I'm gonna keep it a, yeah, let's see. Now my button is flush with my badge. Even though my badge is in a paragraph, which should be causing a line break, but the badge must be making it in line. So that's fine. We can just change my button, because these are all badges, so maybe I'll just do BR right here. There. So Bob Smith is a developer, and then here P class with the role on it, so then we'll add class name, badge, BG primary, developer quality analyst, And I'm gonna say margin start, 2. Let's get some spacing between those. And down here, class name is bad, BG danger. No rules assigned. Display the user's email address. Cool. Let's see if our backend has email address. It probably doesn't. Given family full, it does, email address. Well, that's good. In the card body, let's go ahead and put an email address. Card body. So we got an H5 with a card title. Let's see if there's anything else in the card. Card title, and then just card text is underneath that. Body, titles, text, and links. This will just be card text. We could do a subtitle. Yeah, let's do a subtitle. Card title, card subtitle. Maybe in an H4. Class name, card subtitle, margin bottom 2, text body secondary, and let's do user.email address, full name, email address. Let's see in the console if we got email address coming through. See, yeah, I didn't remember seeing that there. Created on, family name, full name, given role, project, email, address. Given family, role, full, created on, but it's just not getting my email address. Email address 1. Hit the database and let's make sure it's email. Oh, it's just email. See that? See the mistake?
Yeah, yeah.
Email. Okay, got my backend redeployed. And again, if you're testing locally, that's going to save you the time, but I'm not even testing locally. I'm going right to user list, bug list. Okay, so now if I look at my users, there's my email. So now on here, it's no longer email address, it's .email. Cool. Now, I don't like how big that is. Wait, why am I going backwards? H6. There we go. Okay, our users are filling out with better data now that we hit this lab, and it says, hey, make sure to show the email address, the full name, the badges, the created on, and next up is the user editor. Okay. So in order to get to a user editor, we have to make the component, we have to make the button, put the query string up in the URL, we have to read it, we have to hit the database. Several steps, of which, let's close the nav bar. But we've already done it once with bug editor. So in our item, remember what we did here is we made a link to a URL of bug ID. We had to create the route inside of app. So like we did here, let's go ahead and create a route. User ID. Element equals, we don't have an element yet. So let's go ahead and create an element called user editor. Okay, so now we have a component called user editor. We can bring that in. I am sure we're going to need auth to edit the user. User editor is a element. Oops. And just like this was maybe something I did the first time, but I gotta cut that and put it into the element. Okay, so path, P-A-T-H, going to user ID, we'll pull up user editor. User editor is not much there, so let's just test our path. And if I say 1, 2, 3, there's user editor. So any string that's not a predefined route will take us to user editor. Now that we're getting this data back, I'm going to comment out the console log on the, let's see, user list Axios call. Just kind of take that out. And these errors keep coming up. I'm going to take those out. We could do something more, you know, here on the user list, similar to the login. I'm just going to extract my login. I think there are other errors to troubleshoot for, but this is at least a start. So here in my login form, this was back on user list. So I'm going to paste that into user list, and I'm going to bring down show error into user list. Show error equals show error. So on user list, we bring in show error. Now I wonder if that's going to do what I want it to. Clear that out. Yeah, see, okay. Nope, don't want that. Don't want that. It works, but I don't want comment those out for now. Okay. Again, errors are harder to work with than when the data returned successfully, but we'll keep that on our radar of things to work on. So here's user editor. While I'm at it, let's just take from user list and put it in bug list, which we're going to need to bring in show error. But I don't even know that that's how I want to show the error, and I'm not calling it anyways. So again, we'll just leave that there for now on both of our list components. Okay, so this edit user needs to be refactored into a link from React Router. Import link from React Router DOM. This becomes link tag, closing link tag, and link to. This becomes a template string inside of curly's. Slash user slash user dot underscore ID. So now when I hover, these are different IDs, 5B, E2, okay. That's getting us to our user editor. Okay, so now we're going to go over here into user editor, and we're going to extract this using use params so that we can hit the database with that ID. So user editor, let's bring in, oops. Okay, so on the bug editor, here's use params, so we have to read the parameter value of bug ID, and that's object destructuring here. So inside of user editor, we'll do the same thing. Const user ID equals use params, method call user editor hyphen user ID. There's our user ID. Somewhere, our bug list, nothing. When I refresh, we get these console logs, and I'm not sure where I'm doing that console log, or if, yeah, that's okay. I have to find that line. Data's showing up. Click on edit user. We got 5B in the URL. We got 5B on the page. That allows us to bring in use effect, import use effect, and use state from React. Now use state, remember we had our user object and we had to say all of the properties and their kind of default values on bug editor. We did this. So we'll do the same thing for our user. Maybe if I pull up, we got full name. Email, created on, role, full name, email, role, created on. Looks good. Let's bring in use effect. This is where we're going to hit Axios. Let's go to our bug editor, pull in our Axios. Oh, here we go, console log ERR on our bug editor. That's the console log I was looking for. Let's pull in our Axios call here. Well, maybe that was it. Maybe it wasn't, because that was on the bug editor, not on the bug list. Copy. This is on bug editor, so we'll paste that into user editor. And we do this on bug ID or auth. So we're going to go user ID changes or auth changes. And we're calling Axios, hit our server, API, users, / user ID, send over our auth token. We need to get auth from here. And I know we have a method of show error here. Okay. Got an extra comma somewhere. Line 36. Close, close, catch. So we have a single parenthesis after that, yep. My use effect, I'm just going to delete it. Copy over the whole thing. Import Axios. Okay, so we set user and users and user ID. And we gotta bring in Lodash. Okay, that's better. So let's console log res.data if it's good. Otherwise, we'll pipe down show error from app. Okay, let's see what breaks. Okay, console log our user. So we hit the database and we got a user by ID. Of course, their password is encrypted, full name, all the good stuff. Okie dokie. So next up, I'll take a look at Grant's components for the user editor. Now that we have a user kind of from the database, we can do something with that user here. So let's pull in a little form for our user. And ultimately we're going to be setting the user here, changing the different email first, last. Now on our console log, it's family and given. So probably up here we'll do family given full created on family given. Okay, start with created on. Created on is empty. Email is empty. Family full and given, family full and given are empty. Password, even though we're not going to be changing password. You could password reset. Role is empty. And ID is empty. Is it underscore ID? It is underscore ID. Just kind of setting all those initial things to change. And we can make a function update email. The value is user dot email. Just kind of comment these out as we go. Okay. Okay. hold off on these errors.
Mr. G, could you show that on change event just real quick again?
Yeah. Right here?
Yes, thank you. I think I'm good now.
Got it. Okay. So, just like we did before, let's read the new value. This is always such an interesting syntax for changing something. React is just a weird beast. So we're going to call set user. I believe we called it set user. Prev user. And then you arrow function with parentheses and curlies. Spread prev user and update email to new email. Oops. And if this works, I should be able to, there we go. We're not getting any sort of like controlled or uncontrolled things said right here. We just haven't clicked update user, but if I refresh, we're good. Of course, if you update the first name, you're going to need to update the full name, right? So a little bit different. Let's call it given name. So when you change the given name, you change the given name and the full name. Okay, update given name. Okay. update family name, new family name. Full name is previewer dot given name plus and then here, let's bring that in. And just to kind of make sure that the user dot full name is updating appropriately. So if I change either one, it's updating the full name. That's good. Cool. So user full name's doing good. Okay, now the question becomes, what other fields do we want in our user editor? Email. Password says not returned by the API. It's hashed. Given family full and role. So it's an interesting thing to think about. You know, roles could be checkboxes, really, is probably the best control, is to have a checkbox checked for every role that a user may have. And then the thing is, who has permissions to update the roles? And so you're not going to show the checkboxes unless you're logged in with the user with the permissions. So I think that would be a good little exercise to go through. There's a couple of things there that we haven't done with the different controls and the permissions. And so, you know, kind of getting into permissions a little bit. Who can edit roles? I think it might just be technical managers, if I remember right. Can assign roles. So I think technical managers are the only ones that can assign roles. And if I go to my users, I don't know if I have any technical managers. Ah, I am, but no one else. Now, if I go back here, user list, I just noticed, for whatever reason, when I'm logged in, it's not showing me on my user list. Oh, oh. Our default list is stopping you at 5. Page size is 5 if you don't pass something. Page size. Maybe I'm not sending that over right. Doesn't really matter what I'm typing here, but I do have 6 users, and I'm only showing 5 of them. Just for testing purposes, because we got to get this to work with all of our filtering and sorting on the front end. It's not something that we've done, but I'm just going to change that. User JS and change the page size to 10 by default. We can always change that. Oh, I didn't even put the page size. Wait a minute. Project, skip, limit. Oh, that's called skip. Where did I use page size? Limit? Okay, limit is my page size. Limit to 10 records. So page size should have been taken out of rec.query if it was there. So that's something I can troubleshoot with Postman if I change it back to my local server. Okay. Let's see if I get that 6th user now. Okay, there it is. Cool. Cool. And so what I'll do is I'll say something like, so auth is where the permissions exist. So here I'm going to console log auth whenever we're successful. Instead of doing that, console log auth. And we'll navigate down into the permissions. So here's my auth. Inside of auth, we have a token, which is an object, email. I don't know that that's, okay, that's payload. So payload has permissions object. So it'll be auth.payload.permissions can assign roles. So we have to follow that auth.payload.permissions. So let's kind of go here And I'm just going to do something like this. Auth.payload.permissions.can assign roles. And I'll say paragraph user can assign roles. Okay, so obviously Evan can assign roles, but if I were to log out Bob Smith, log in as Bob Smith, doesn't like my password, user list, edit user, we see that he doesn't see that because he doesn't have that permission. And if I kind of go down here, payload, permissions, you can see his permissions are different. Okay, that's where we need to start. That my user is a part of the role with the permissions to edit roles. So Evan can assign roles. So now let's go to Bootstrap, get Bootstrap, and something as simple as a input group. Let's see, checks and radios. So we do want to check box. And these can be statically configured, and you can see, let's see, input each. This is input is a form check input type of checkbox with the Bootstrap class, and pretty straightforward. Each checkbox is in its own div. So again, you have your own div for each control, and pretty straightforward. So if I go down to here, do a React fragment. Okay. Now our inputs need to be self-closing. I don't want anything to be checked. So we'll get our kind of our static checkboxes laid out. Tab the controls in, tab these controls in. Okay, so what are our roles? Let's go back to our database. And we need a checkbox for developer, quality analyst. So this will say developer. And this will be TXT or CHK developer. Anything checked right now. Quality. Yeah, we'll fix that. Quality analyst, like I don't want this to be checked by default. Why are you checked by default? Let me go back to user list. Okay, not checked by default. And maybe we want these kind of going across. I don't know. We obviously want the button to update the user beneath this. Okay. Okay, developer, QA, BA, product manager. Finally, technical manager. Cool. And the positioning could be a whole lot better. But just push that down. Margin on the Y, 3. Okay. I'm gonna go back and reference what we did with our bug editor. We kind of read a string like this. And so let's do that. Initial roles. And that would be either a string or an array. That's what complicates the thing. But in our user editor, initial roles equals user question mark dot role or nothing. Okay, and then we went down here and we said, just go ahead and select a single value based on that initial bug classification. It's a little bit different here. So, again, one thing if it's a string, another thing if it's an array, another thing if it's null. Thinking. Okay, so here's what I have so far, and this is not done. But it is very similar to Bug Editor. Bug Editor was a little bit easier. On Bug Editor, we read an initial classification off of our bug, and it was a string, and that was straightforward. And then on our select list, we just said, hey, value of initial classification, and it selected whatever the classification was based on what was selected. Now, on user editor, this is tricky because this could be an array or a string, and Grant made a pretty good observation that probably, even if it was just, that's an extra challenge, is having it either a string or an array. We could, even if it was just one role, we could put that one role in an array of strings, and so that one role could ultimately still be an array. But here we read the roles, right? And so this would be an array into this initial roles. And then what I have so far is now you do on the checkbox, you do the checked property equals initial role dot includes the word developer. And this is just a work in progress, and that is getting my developer checked on Evan Gudmested, who has that role. Now, there's a couple things here that I need to clean up. HTML4. Wait a minute. So that is right. So, okay. Here is on the label 4 needs to be HTML4 on the label. So here, and oh yeah, down here. Okay, this is all class name, class name, class name, class name, class name, class name, class name. Okay. And then these 4s become HTML4. So this is kind of the first step. Let's go back to user lists. Let's click on edit. And we're doing good. Now it says you have a checked property without an on change, so we do need to address that. But that's where we're headed. But what I want to continue to check is if this works on the other ones. And I need to kind of take a look at, also, is it case sensitive? Okay, that's not working on any other ones. So let's expand and let's go. I'm gonna console log initial roles. I know there's 3 of them on my. So it's lowercase letters, which could be leading to our case sensitive. Now we're closer, we're getting 2. And so what's the other role that's not working out? Because I should be a technical manager. Oh. Technical manager, still capital T. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. However, we get to check this out on another. So if I go back to my user list, developers working. Go back to my user list. Cool. Okay. So we need a function that we call probably on change on any one of these. And that function probably needs to again do the role update AVT. So let's make a function called role update. And that should fire on both on change. So if it goes from unchecked to checked or checked to unchecked. This shouldn't be so hard, and I think we're making good progress. So if I uncheck developer, now state's not changing, but that's good. Okay, this is really, Grant, you with me, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool. This is the last task of the day that I'd like to finish up. Hopefully it's gonna go smoothly, but I expect a few bumps regardless. So we have this function called role update, and you know we can write our logic in here now. You know, this will just get the value of the checkbox into a variable, right? So the value of the checkbox is going, so it'll say developer or what have you. And then we kind of have an if situation, if it's, you know, if it's checked or unchecked, right? So we need to set the user kind of like what we did here, but then based on some conditions, set user, prev user, then we could say if prev user dot role includes checkbox value let's get the parentheses off here. There we go. So if the previous user role includes the value, then we need to remove it, right? So if the checkbox value is already in the array, we need to remove it. And this will return previous user dot role filter role where the role is not equal to. So this returns an array with that role filtered out. Otherwise, return an array when we spread and add the checkbox value. So this is returning an array where we're spreading the array and adding a checkbox value. And let's just see if that runs without. Now we're not ultimately saving this user yet. Let's pull this over. Okay. Now, we've seen that error before. And so let me kind of refresh this. Logging in. User lists. Okay. Now, initial roles is based on user.role. So I might be able to circumvent that and just go right into user.role. So down here, instead of using initial roles, I could just do user.role and try that. And I'm gonna need a refresh, of course, because okay, so that's better. Using user role. So let's refactor each one of these to say user.role. That way I can delete initial roles. And let's go back to bug list, user list. Okay, 3 there, 2 there. Oops, I did not mean to click that update button. Of course, that doesn't work. Let's back up, log in. Okay, user list, edit user. Cannot read properties, reading includes. User editor. Okay, so up here, that gets me to the role update. I'm just going to okay. Click on business analyst, and there, full name, given name. So role. Okay. Try this again. I'm gonna take out a few console logs here. Okay, so in my login form, I have a console log that I'm going to take out my auth payload. So if I log out, clear, log back in, got too much going on in the console, I need to clean it up a little. Okay, user list, edit user. So when I hit user editor, I'm logging something here. So I'm logging my auth, which I'm not interested in at the moment. So let me log back out, log back in. user list, edit. Okay, so that's there. Now, when I click on this change, role update, checkbox value, set user to the previous user. So if I click, that unchecks that, but it did do a console log. And there's my user that it's working with. Okay. So it is. Let's bring this in. If previous user role dot includes. So clear this out. Back up to my user list. Edit. Cannot read properties of undefined. Cannot read properties of undefined includes. So I think that's this line right here, but it did say that my previous user so just kind of troubleshooting here. One thing I noticed that my inputs, I never configured them with a value, and so that's problematic. So I'm going to change that to these values. Now maybe I need to change these again to something more dynamic, but I'm trying to get this to work the way I have it here. So now the input has a value of product manager for product manager, technical manager. Okay. So if I log in, find my next problem, user list, edit user. And so on my edit user, I currently in troubleshooting, I'm just getting the checkbox value in a console log. And it is saying business analyst. And this is saying controlled to uncontrolled. Because we have these statically configured values down here, which might need to come from a state variable. So let's put that in state. So the value of developer, so as our users, we kind of came up here. Let's set up our initial role. Quality analyst. I believe business analyst. Something and then technical manager. Technical manager. After business analyst comes
Product manager.
Product manager. So these are our roles, and we can come down here and in our values we can say user.role there we go. So again, if I kind of back up here, list, edit user. Okay, now it says the value is developer. Okay. So kind of follow suit here. This would be value here. Okay. All right. So that hopefully kind of helps us with the controlled to uncontrolled, since we're just keeping everything in state. Now when we check a box, we got the checkbox value. And now let's bring this little logic back. See, I don't know that we actually fixed. Cannot read properties of undefined reading 0. Look at this a little closer. Okay, if you're following along, you might not want to follow along at the moment, and just pause and maybe rewind if this, because I'm just trying. But basically, what we have right now is, notice my roles are developer, technical manager, quality analyst, and when I click edit user, the values, so for example, if I inspect here quality analyst, the value is coming across technical manager as technical manager. So what I want to do is I want to loop through my roles and print them out. For each role, I'm going to iterate with a map and map out a checkbox instead of statically configuring my checkboxes. So that's kind of the direction that I want to head. Because of this problem that I've hit. And so for now, everything inside of here, temporarily, I'm just going to kind of comment out. And I'm going to bring in Lodash, which I already have in here. And let's try and map. And this is user role. And so map takes an argument of user role. And let me go up to the user list and look up map user role, okay, comma, and then parentheses. So user dot role, comma, parentheses. For each role, we'll bring in an index 2. And this is a arrow parenthesis, common mistake where I don't do that parenthesis. So arrow parenthesis, and this needs to go inside of curlies. And let's bring in one of these divs. this value will just be role, and this is if the user's role includes developer. Now our IDs here will just say role. And if the user role includes role, okay, so that gets the 3. None of them are checked. Shouldn't be that hard of a problem to solve, but it's interesting. So now at least if I inspect these 3, granted these are developer, 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 it says developer, technical manager, technical manager, technical manager. Right, but that's just because I have those 3. All right, I'm gonna pause and just troubleshoot a little bit more. Okay, at a decent spot where it's checking the boxes and unchecking, and I've figured out working state for now. So I did undo this map. I was just trying this map and I said don't follow along. So I'm kind of back to my statically configured values. And again, I did notice at some point that my values were not coded in there properly. So now I have the values of all 5 of my roles coded into my checkboxes. The checked is back to, hey, if the user's role includes it, then it's checked by that little, kind of conditional. And all 5 of them calls the role update on change. And so I was really close with my role update. We read the value of the checkbox. So that's statically configured down here, right? So we have those statically configured. And then we call set user previous user. And then I did a console log. I did some console logging. Obviously you don't need those logs. But what was missing here at one point, again, you don't need the true block hit or the false block hit. What was missing when I did a return was I had to spread the object, so I was missing these curly braces. So I needed to return an object, and that's going to go to the set user, right? This object is going into set user, and it's either this object or this object. So based on this if else, I'm returning this object or I'm returning that object. And my return statement wasn't an object, it was just an array of roles. So I had to basically wrap my return statement, return an object, spread the previous user in both cases, and then update the role. Now in this case, we're removing a role, right? We're going to the previous user's role filtering. We're filtering out the role that was checked and it's no longer checked. So in this case, if if the user had the role, we're removing the role. Otherwise, we're spreading the user and we're adding the role to the array, to the role array. So that gets me to here, where, again, let me go ahead and log out. And log in. And let me clear my log here. Go to my user list, click on edit user, and I'm able to uncheck and check, and all of that is in fact working now. Just to kind of be thorough here, I can maybe in at the bottom of my page or something, I'm just going to do an H1. Okay, so you could see as I'm checking and unchecking, you can see the strings kind of being added to the array and removed from the array on my user's role. Okay, so it wasn't that hard of a problem to tackle, but what you'll find out the more you work in React is that there's always more than one way to solve it, and ChatGPT is a wonderful tool, Google's a wonderful tool, but you really just have to use kind of a combined, there's no like one way of writing this code. So you just kind of troubleshoot and tinker and try different things until you get something that works. So Grant, how you doing?
I need the code one more time. I can remove roles, but it crashes when I add them.
Okay. So when we're adding roles, we're looking at right here. Okay, just kind of helped Grant along. The thing here is that he was kind of crashing here, just a little typo. The role property is an array, so this needed to be brackets, and he had curlies, and I can't tell you how many times I've done that, and so very normal problem, but that kind of fixed his problem. And now we are saving our user appropriately. Now we just have to wire up the save button, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that tomorrow. We are nearing the end of this lab, so we'll save that for tomorrow. And so all is good on another day, and we'll see you guys in the morning.